Welcome to Magayo Messenger. It's great to be with you all as always, and I want to give some quick shout outs to who I see in the chat right now. Robert, Elijah, David, woohoo, William, Robert. Oh, that's Robert again, twice. Michelle, WMG. All right, great to see you guys. Thanks so much for being with me. And guys, I have some exciting things to share with you in this video. Oh boy, you will want to stay with this video to the end. Now, I'm going to try to get through it as quickly as I can, but man, oh man, there's so much information. I could easily do a 3-hour epic movie on every point that I'm going to share with you tonight. Before I continue, be sure to hit that subscribe button. We are getting attacked with claims that you are robots. I don't think you're a robot. Do you think you are? Unless maybe you got one of those Musk brain chips implanted. I'm not sure. But in any case, please hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so that you don't miss any of our videos. And like I say, they're removing people, so make sure you're still subscribed to our channel. Amen. Awesome. And guys, this is an exciting video. Like I said, you want to stick through it till the end because it builds. It's going to build. One point builds on the other, and you won't want to miss the epic finale. So we start here in the Bible, of course, because that is always our plumb line. Ecclesiastes chapter 1. It says in verse 9, it says, "What has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. Is there anything of which one can say, look, this is something new? It was here already long ago." Oh, long ago. It was here before our time. There is no remembrance of men of old, and even those who are yet to come will not be remembered by those who follow. Keep that in mind as we carry on here into this exciting journey, guys. And like I say, I'm going to try to cruise through it, but there's a lot of information. And at some point, you just got to say, all right, I'm going to give you what I got so far. But boy, we could literally do video after video on each point and each thing I'm going to share with you here. So check this out. The Tower of Babel. Actually, before we get to the Tower of Babel, let me first read to you. Now, Noah, as you know, was the man in the ark, right, who saved his family from the epic flood. And his 3 sons were Ham, Japheth, and Shem, okay? Now, we're going to focus on Ham for a second here. Now, Ham was the father of Cush, and Cush was the father of Nimrod, okay? Nimrod. So, basically, Noah was Nimrod's great-grandfather, okay? Makes sense? So, Cush was the father of Nimrod, who grew to be a mighty warrior on the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. That is why it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. The first centers of his kingdom were Babylon, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh in Shinar. From that land he went to Assyria, where he built Nineveh, Rehoboth, Ir, Calah, and Rezin, which is between Nineveh and Calah. That is the great city. Okay, so this man Nimrod was a mighty hunter and warrior, but he also built a lot of cities, and he got around. You know, he wasn't just sitting in one place. He traveled around. He started out in Cush, right? Cush is over in the Egyptian African territory there, as we're going to talk about. But then he made his way over to the other side where Babylon is, and we're going to see why he did that and what the connection is there and how this all may tie into the Antichrist and the beast of Revelation. So hang on to your hats, kids, because this is going to get exciting. Okay, so check this out. So this is the land of Cush, okay? And the land of Cush, the ancient land of Cush, actually, many believe, was kind of a broad area, not just the land of Ethiopia that we know of today, but that may have actually encompassed Egypt as well. Some believe it may have even gone across the Red Sea to the Sinai Peninsula and all the way up through Egypt. As you see here, this is saying the Cush Empire, and that's including all of Egypt as well. And there's a couple maps of that. And some even say it goes farther than that. It goes all the way over to the other side. Now, again, Nimrod was the son of Cush, and Cush is over here, but then Nimrod goes over there. So you see, this kingdom is kind of spread out a bit, one could argue. Now, this could be because of what's known as the Fertile Crescent. The Fertile Crescent, okay? And the Fertile Crescent simply means it was the area where all the fresh water flows, and so that's where everything grew, right? And that naturally is where people would travel because you need to drink water to survive, right? So you need fresh water and access to it. So it made sense if they're going to travel, they're going to travel along the Fertile Crescent. And that makes sense why he starts out in Cush, makes his way up through Egypt, and then through what would be, Samaria, Damascus, today's Israel, and then over to Assyria and Babylon, etc. Okay, now we're talking about Nimrod. We're not yet to the Israelites yet. We're not to Abraham and Jacob and all of them. This is still pre-Abraham, okay? So just to, kind of where we're at. We're after the flood, but not quite yet to the Israelites, okay? And that's where Nimrod comes into this story. So that's the Fertile Crescent, okay? The Fertile Crescent. So that kind of gives you an understanding of why he would start in Cush, but then wind up over on the other side of the Fertile Crescent, because that's where he would naturally travel. If he wants to build cities, he's going to build cities in those areas. That just kind of makes sense. Amen. So something to consider is no one knows who built the Great Pyramid, the biggest of pyramids. That one particularly is a mystery to everyone. There's no actual Egyptian writing inside. They don't really know who made that ginormous pyramid. Okay. Now if we go back to Genesis here, we're going to see a couple things. And so we saw that he built all these cities, right? But what we haven't seen yet is that they also built this tower called the Tower of Babel. Now, you've probably heard about that as well. So following him building all these cities, it says in verse 1, now the whole world had one language and a common speech as men moved eastward, right? So that's where he was moving eastward, because he started out west in Cush, and then he moved eastward over to the area of Babylon. As men moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar and settled there, or Shinar. They said to each other, come, let's make bricks and bake them thoroughly. They used brick instead of stone and tar for mortar. So this is what you call industrial revolution, right? They started out with stones. Now, something like the Great Pyramid, that was made with giant stones, right? But they got a little more advanced. They said, boy, it's hard to bring all those big stones. Why don't we create bricks? Hey, it's this new thing we're trying. Then they said, come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves and not be scattered over the face of the whole earth. Now, the Lord was not too excited about this. So there's a lot of reason to believe that this was more than just making a name for yourselves, but perhaps trying to eradicate the name of God, so to speak, and take the place of God. They want to reach to heaven. That's what Satan wanted to do. He wanted to ascend to the heights and take the throne of God, right? So there could be some connection there. And it says, but the Lord came down to see the city and the tower the men were building. The Lord said, if there's one people speaking the same language, they've begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language. Okay, so they will not understand each other. So the Lord scattered them from there over all the earth, and they stopped building the city. Okay, that is why it's called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole world. And from there, the Lord scattered them over the face of the whole earth. Okay, so, interesting, dynamic. We could spend a lot of time just on this, but we got a lot of ground to cover. But this is interesting, okay? So just keep this in mind, so this idea of the Tower of Babel, the plain of Shinar, and that's where he wound up. That's where Nimrod ended up planting all those cities that we just read about, right? And we're going to take a look at that. And so it's very interesting to consider that, okay? Once again, just going back there and taking a quick peek at those cities, just to remind you the cities that he created there, the Hamites. Where are you, Hamites? Okay, yeah, like Nimrod, and he went to Syria, Nineveh, Rezin, etc., and he created all these amazing cities in Shinar, the same place where they built the Tower of Babel. I just wanted to show you that so you know we're talking about the same peoples, okay? The same peoples, okay. So, all right, so now we're making our way through here. Let me get back to where I was there. And the Fertile Crescent, we talked about that. The pyramid. So the question is it possible that Nimrod built the Great Pyramid, or maybe Cush? Maybe it came of their generation, and that when he went over to make the Tower of Babel, he was inspired by the Great Pyramid and said, hey, let's do something similar to that. And as we know, there are pyramids everywhere now in the world, including Antarctica, of all places, on every continent. And so it does kind of make you wonder, were these pyramids kind of a way to kind of, that was their spreading of the pyramid gospel, so to speak. They would go to plants, and then instead of setting up a church, they'd set up a pyramid. It's kind of saying we were here. They make their mark, and they wanted to do the same thing there in Shinar with the Tower of Babel. And there have been all kinds of different pyramids, and we know that obviously there's the Great Pyramid, but there's lots of other styles of pyramids, including the pyramids that were built, the ziggurats that you find in that area of Babylon, the land of Uruk, etc. Okay, so the Tower of Babel, as you notice, it's often portrayed as this cylindrical kind of minaret, going up and with progressively smaller levels. But really, it's a pyramid if you think about it. It starts wide at the base and it gets small at the top. It's just more often depicted round than triangular in shape. But still, nevertheless, similar concept there, right? Okay, so here's that concept. You got Ham, the sons of Ham over here. You got Shem kind of in the middle. You got Japheth up at the top there. And so... Nimrod, he's kind of leaving the Ham land and going over to Shem's land, so to speak, to do what he's doing there. So here's the kingdom of Nimrod, okay? And here's the different cities that he set up. There's the Tower of Babel, and Eridu is where they believe it was. And so that's the whole that's the Nimrod story. Now, what's interesting is in 1989. Now, okay, this goes back 1989. All right. They found a gold-stuffed tomb unearthed at Nimrod in northern Iraq. So there's actually a city named Nimrod, okay? So it kind of helps verify that this guy actually existed. There's a city called Nimrod, and they unearthed a golden tomb there, and it was a tomb of women who they call the Queen's Tombs, and this is from, going back, way back to the day. And they don't know exactly who they are, though they say they think it's of this king or of that king and so forth. But here's an inscription that was on the tomb that they found. It says, "If anyone lays his hands on my tomb, or opens my grave, or steals my jewelry, I pray to the gods of the netherworld that his soul shall roam in the scorching sun after death. Let the ghost of insomnia take hold of him forever and ever," it said. Wow. Okay, so I don't know what happened to the person that opened that tomb, but that is interesting that is what was on the outside. Okay, so they found this tomb, and it was packed full of gold, okay? Well, of course, that's going to get some people's attention right there, just from a pure treasure hunter standpoint, right? So they were called the Queen's Tombs at Nimrod. Okay, and here's some look at what those tombs kind of look like inside, and then here's a look at all the treasure. Woohoo! Lots of golden treasures inside the tombs, the Queen's Tombs of Nimrod. Wow. So I guess there were they had tons and tons of stuff. I guess she had 100 earrings next to her head. She had all kinds of belts and anklets and necklaces and you name it. All kinds of fun stuff was found inside of that tomb. Okay, interesting. Now stick with me here. This is all going to tie into something. Okay, so don't get lost now. Don't get lost in the golden treasures. Okay, so they find all this gold, right? Now this is up in this area called Nimrod or Kala today, but that's sort of northern area of Nimrod's kingdom. Okay. Now, the bigger part of his kingdom was really closer to the Persian Gulf, further down there where the Tigris and Euphrates meet. But Nimrod, okay, so that's the golden tomb that they find, right? So interestingly, just happens to be that the following year, that was 1989, the following year, they have a war in the Gulf. Huh, isn't that interesting? They just happen to have a war at the same time. Now, is there any connection between these two events? Well, funny you should ask. Back during the Second World War, it was known that those of Germanic persuasion were spending their time not just fighting battles, but actually looking for hidden treasures, lost hidden treasures of all time, like Thor's hammer and the Holy Grail. When you see Indiana Jones, for example, and the Lost Ark of the Covenant, Indiana Jones and the Lost Ark, the end of that movie. Well, it's based on the truth. They really were looking for the Holy Grail. They really were looking for the Lost Ark of the Covenant. They were looking for this stuff. See, Ark of the Covenant and the Holy Grail. This is what they were doing back in that time. And they had different operations where they would actually go in and plunder different artifacts and paintings and all kinds of rare things as they were fighting, battles on the front. Behind the scenes, they're going in and they're plundering all the different artifacts. And we know that their leader, who will remain unnamed, but I think you know who I'm talking about. He had a lot of, and just that whole cult had a lot of occult ritual and symbolism, and they worshiped those things, and they wanted those relics because they thought they had got power from them, like the sword, the spear of destiny, for example. They thought they get power from these different artifacts that they would collect. So they went out and they found all these artifacts, and there's all kinds of images here where they just are looting and filling entire cathedrals with all the loot that they got and all the paintings. Here's a famous picture here of President Eisenhower and General Patton and Bradley looking through some of the stolen artwork that they had gotten during that time. Here's a salt mine that's just full of gold that they had stored up and stolen and plundered and so forth. So there was a lot of this going on. Not to mention what they plundered from the people that they abused. So that's a whole nother a story, but a very similar story. And like I say, these people are not gone. They're still here today doing the evil that they do. So they still believe in these things. They still believe in these relics. They still believe in getting hold of these old things and that they're going to get power from them. And we're going to get a little bit deeper on that as we go here. Okay, so as you can see, this is ancient Nimrod, and it looks like it's been plundered. It's like they just kind of smashed it up looking for stuff that they were looking for during this time in 1990. 91, right? That they went in and it actually says, and you kind of wonder, well, who were they looking for? Was it this guy here? Is that who they were looking for? Well, we find out actually as we go a little bit deeper here. This isn't the last time this happened. Now, if you remember, after the 9 to the 1 to the 1, they were all pumped up. Okay, we got to go to war again. And yet the people they were blaming were in Afghanistan, but mysteriously they said, no, we're going to go back to Iraq again. And you're like, what? Why are we going to Iraq again? And, they claimed, it's because of these WNDs. That free speech network? No, just kidding. Similar acronym to that. I think you know what I'm talking about. But those didn't exist, right? But they made that claim so they could go in, take down the regime, and take this man out. But during that time, when he was supposedly hiding in some underground bunker, they spent 8 months looking for him. Well, what were they really doing during that 8 months? In fact, as you notice there, when they did this war, it went from 2003 to 2011. How many years is that? 8 years? So it wasn't just 8 months, 8 years they spent there. What were they doing all that time? Finding treasure, perhaps? Well, according to this, this was in 2003, same time that they went in to invade. The treasure of Nimrod is found in Iraq. Interesting coincidence, right? They just happened to find some treasure along the way. Or was it that they went there to find the treasure? It says it survived 2,800 years buried in a dusty town. It then spent 12 years tucked away in a vault. Till Thursday, it was uncertain whether it had survived Saddam Hussein's son, a U.S. missile strike, looters, a flood. Now that we're going to talk about that in a little bit. A flood and a grenade attack. But it's been found intact. Oh, isn't that nice? And now who knows whatever happened to all that treasure, right? I mean, treasures of Nimrod found in an Iraqi vault. Okay, so, you think they're there just to, because they're trying to bring justice to the world and freedom and love and all that good stuff, right? Or is it because they're treasure hunters in disguise and this is a good opportunity? And is it because they're looking perhaps for some of these relics or even some of these people who lived once before that could be useful to them now? Here in March 2015, it says, unrivaled riches of Nimrod, capital of world's first empire. Okay, and so So they have all these treasures that they found, etc., right? And on it goes, looking for treasures. They haven't stopped. Here in 2015, lost lines rediscovered from the Epic of Gilgamesh. Okay, we're going to talk about this Epic of Gilgamesh in a second here. But how looting in Iraq unearthed the treasures of Gilgamesh. Okay, let's keep going here. It's disturbingly easy to buy Iraq's archaeological treasures. Okay, so now, they're saying these treasures are everywhere. In fact, people are just buying them on the black market. 2018, in fact, the Hobby Lobby owner, I guess, bought one of these Gilgamesh tablets, and the government came after him for it and charged him and so forth for doing so. But I think he wanted it because it backs up something very exciting I'm going to share with you in a second. But here another one. Looting the Gilgamesh tablet, they finally returned it to Iraq. Then they had a special ceremony for it, etc. Okay, so who is Gilgamesh? Gilgamesh. All right, so Gilgamesh is an interesting dude. He's possibly the historical king of the Sumerian city of Uruk. But more importantly than that, he's also possibly Nimrod. Okay, so it's believed that Gilgamesh is actually Nimrod. Okay, now there's a story called the Epic of Gilgamesh. And in that story, Gilgamesh recounts the story of the flood. It's one of the other flood accounts that exist that goes back to the Bible. Many believe even predates the Bible being written when Gilgamesh wrote this down, which it would make sense because Moses wrote the first 5 books of the Old Testament, and Nimrod lived long before that, right? So it would make sense if Nimrod was the great grandson of Noah. That he would have known Noah, spent time with Noah, talked with Noah. So why not, write this story down and keep an account of the Great Flood, right? So that is who Gilgamesh actually is, or believed to be, is that he is indeed Nimrod. And so there are, different names were used at different times for different reasons and so forth. But that is what is believed about this Gilgamesh person, that the Epic of Gilgamesh talks about the flood. So when the guy of Hobby Lobby, who's a Christian, buys the tablet, now you can understand why he wanted to buy that, because it recorded the flood. And that's very faith-building indeed. So also here's, this is as recent as December of last year, so that's just a couple months ago, they found a significant palace door threshold. So they haven't stopped. They're still there looking for treasures. If you wonder why they've been there all this time, like why haven't they gotten out of that city? They must be there for the oil. Well, that's one treasure, but there's also these treasures, which those who are of the occult nature and satanic nature see as having a lot of power in them. So they want to get hold of some of these relics and perhaps even some of these people. This one also is interesting. Just this past year, April of 22, 4,000-year-old Mesopotamian boat near Uruk, which is there in the land of Nimrod, was rescued. Makes you wonder, did this boat, does this boat have any connection back to flood times as well? Obviously, there's one boat, there was one ark with Noah, but it is interesting that they found a boat of all things that's 4,000 years old, so that's kind of intriguing in and of itself. So, what were these soldiers really looking for, okay? Were they really thinking that Saddam Hussein is hiding in this ziggurat or this pyramid of its time, or were they looking for other things in addition? Perhaps this man? Is this the man they were looking for? Mr. Gilgamesh? Mr. Nimrod? Well, Gilgamesh or Nimrod was depicted as a giant. And some say there might even be some Anunnaki influence going on here. As we know, Goliath was descendants of the Anunnaki, or the Anak, as it says in the Bible. And the Nephilim. The Nephilim is what we're really getting at here, where the fallen angels mated with mankind, and you created these superhumans, these demigods, so to speak, who were giant. I mean, here he is holding a lion like it's a house cat. So kind of an interesting theory. Was he a giant? Was he this super strong being, a beast, if you will, a creature, if you will, not just a regular man? Which brings us to Uruk. Uruk. Okay, so going back to our handy-dandy map, which I think we have here, Uruk, as you can see, or Erech, as the Bible pronounced it, right? It's the same place. That's there You can see it kind of in the mid. If you see that land of Shinar, which is yellow, it's kind of like right in the middle at the bottom, right there. You see Uruk. So they wind up in the town of Uruk, and lo and behold, what do they find? Well, let's take a look, shall we? Okay, so they go to Uruk, and so now they're in the southern part. Like back in the 90s, they were up in that northern part where that queen's, the golden, tomb was found. But now they're in the lower parts looking around, and now we're getting into some deeper things as we're going to see. Okay, so now something to consider, something you'll notice here actually, is the Persian Gulf at that time, as you see on the map, was further in. And as we're going to see, they actually describe those towns at that time was like Venice, how it's like a city on water, right? There isn't really land. They're just sort of like taking boats around to each other. So it was that kind of feel to it. And the water really inundated and flooded those areas, which in itself is intriguing. This is different, again, than that Nimrod area. Just wanted to show you a comparison there. Okay, so they come to this Uruk area, and they start exploring here, and now they're finding some other interesting things. Now here, we see one of those ziggurats again. You can see with the steps of it that it's actually a pyramid. They're not just some natural formation, but actually it has those steps of a pyramid formation there. And so they're looking around Uruk, and they finally find this, which supposedly is a tomb. And they get a little close. Come a little bit closer. They get a little closer and start digging deep into this tomb. And so make our way through here. They claim to find the legendary grave, or the grave of legendary Gilgamesh, or Nimrod. So, could this be what they were looking for all along? Well, the German archaeologists, interesting, they just happen to be German archaeologists. Boy, sounds familiar. Hope to return to Iraq when it returns to normality to examine whether an anomaly in the ground is the lost grave of King Gilgamesh, the legendary subject of the world's oldest book. Now, they're not quick to say Nimrod, it's because most people don't know who Gilgamesh is. They don't necessarily make the connection. But the German-led team believes it has found indications that may tie with the description of the book describing the king's burial place. So basically, in the Epic of Gilgamesh, it describes the city. And so when they went into the city, they realized that every aspect that's described in the Epic of Gilgamesh is present in that city, just as described. And now, what's also interesting in this is it says that Gilgamesh was buried under the river. Okay, now keep that in mind. Under the river. It says, the structure appears to be on the site where the Euphrates River once flowed. Okay? So we know the Euphrates has been drying up and revealing all kinds of amazing treasures. Well, this one, it may just take the cake. But they say that Gilgamesh, the Epic of Gilgamesh, right, where it recounts the flood that, that dates back, the original book, says that Gilgamesh was buried under the river when it parted after his death. When it parted, almost sounds like the Red Sea. When it parted after his death. So sounds like it parted for him so they could bury him, and then it came back again. Isn't that interesting? So he's buried underneath the river Euphrates. The structure is on what is thought to be the former canal of the Euphrates. And going on this, we found one can make an interpretation. Now, of course, they say all this, and then, as usual, they try to say, well, we don't really know, blah, blah, blah. It's like they have to admit it, but then kind of downplay it so that you don't get too excited because you're going to want to see a body or two. Okay, so interesting. Here, also another article comes out, says Gilgamesh tomb believed to be found. Again, 2003. Same year, right? Same year that they went in, supposedly looking for Saddam Hussein, but they're just finding all kinds of other treasures along the way, right? Just so happens to be. So very interesting. It says, again, when the waters of the ancient river parted following his death, that's when he was buried. We found the city just outside an area in the middle of the former Euphrates River. There remains such a building that could be interpreted as a burial. Now remember, not just the Euphrates, but also the whole Persian Gulf may have flooded in to that point, which we're going to see why that may have a role. And then they again call it the Venice of the desert, the way it was kind of a river city or a water city. Okay, let's keep going here. And I think I shared the main of what I wanted to share with you here about him being buried. So just that idea of him being buried underwater. Okay, keep that in mind. Just keep that in mind. Okay, because it bears repeating because it has a biblical connection here. Okay, let's keep going here. Okay, so finally then in 2012, they say the tomb of Nimrod has been discovered, which is the same guy, right? Most believe it's the same guy, Gilgamesh, Nimrod, right? Because that was the land of Nimrod, where Gilgamesh is found. That's Nimrod's land, So in any case, they finally confess that Nimrod has been found as well. Nimrod found, okay, and let's see, yeah. What's interesting here too is there. Oh, this is really cool. So they talk about the Sumerian kings, okay, and the Sumer is the same area there that you can see there. You see how it says Sumer? It's the same area where the tomb of Gilgamesh is that Uruk area or Nimrod. Okay, so just want to show you that. You see Uruk there, and you see Sumer. Okay, so they're talking about the Sumerian king, and he kind of stands out above all others, and his name is Enmerkar. Enmerkar, Sumer is believed to be an Akkadian form of Shinar. Shinar is the name of the great southern Mesopotamia, etc., descended to him where Nimrod began to rule. Okay, most of the rulers on either side of Enmerkar's reign are known only for brief token references. We know a whole lot more, though, about Enmerkar. Based on additional texts and references, this king bears a lot of resemblance to Nimrod. Okay. And it says the biblical Nimrod came on the scene just 3 generations after the extremely long-living antediluvian patriarchs like Noah, etc. Similarly, Enmerkar ruled 3 generations after the king's 900 rulers. Okay. It has been put forward that the Kar in the name Enmerkar could mean hunter. Remember Nimrod, the mighty hunter, it says in Genesis, right? If this is the case, then we would have the name Enmer, the hunter, as paralleling Nimrod, the mighty hunter. Perhaps the consonants in Enmer, NMR, are a connection with the name Nimrod, NMR, and the original Hebrew spelling NMRD. And Nimrod's father's Cush is his grandfather Ham, etc. So they're tying him into this ruler there, which is very curious as well. And Enmerkar built the city of Uruk. The Bible says Nimrod founded the city of Uruk. So we're finding that he may be known by many names. He can be known by Enmerkar. He can be known by Gilgamesh. He can be known by Nimrod. There's different names that represent this guy. Again, I could spend a lot more time on this, but just wanted to share that with you. Thought that was kind of intriguing. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, so then we get this. All right, so they found the body, they found the tomb, and now we have videos and pictures surfacing claiming that this is the man. Behold the man. That this is Nimrod or Gilgamesh. Now, what's really interesting about these pictures is that, as you can see, this guy looks like he's sleeping. I mean, he doesn't look like a decayed body. He looks like someone who just went to take a nap and you're going to go wake him up. I mean, the guy looks like he could still be alive. Versus this picture, which is also surfacing along with it. I don't know if it's to distract us from the other photo. I don't know if they're both fake or they're both real. I can't attest for that. All I can say is this is what's circulating right now. And this particular individual, his eyes are like glowing. I don't know if it's because they're fake eyes or if he has coins on his eyes or marbles, which they sometimes put things on people's eyes when they die. I don't know exactly why that is, but that is another image. But this guy in particular really kind of grabs you because you're like, wow, the guy looks like he's alive. Now, someone could be posing for that. There is a video of this. You can go check it out. This doesn't show you much more than what I'm showing you right now, but it just kind of moves around a little bit. But it's very interesting to think about this. Now, this is going to play an interesting role in just a second in terms of the fact that he looks like he's still alive. I mean, his hair looks in good shape. Everything looks, fresh, right? So here it talks about videos that claim to show lifelike Anunnaki mummies in stasis and artifacts found in Iran. Now this is saying Iran, but others are saying that this is the actual video of Nimrod. Now, there's all kinds of different information going around there. I'm not claiming one is true over the other or that any of it's true. I'm just presenting it to you, and you can make up your own mind as to what's real and what isn't. But what's interesting about this, why this is somewhat compelling, this idea of being in stasis, the idea that they haven't decayed, right? They're like in suspended animation. Like if you were to get in a rocket ship and you wake up 10 years later, but you're like the same, you're just kind of in frozen, cryogenic chamber, so to speak. That's what's interesting about this because of this. Okay, so we all remember Hillary and her wonderful emails, right? Due to the Freedom of Information Act, some of those emails have now been released. And believe it or not, there's a reference in those emails to Gilgamesh and the resurrection of Gilgamesh and the tomb of the Nephilim. Now, you might think, oh, come on, that sounds ridiculous. But you can actually go to the official U.S. Department of State website. Yeah, that's right. And you can look this up for yourself. And it's right there. What? Yeah. Go and check it out. You will see what I'm talking about. But I'm going to show it to you anyway. So anyway, it's a little hard to find. You got to go look through a lot of documents, and you may get a little lost. You may find some other interesting things while you're looking in here too. So if you're in a mood for treasure hunting, be my guest. But I was specifically looking for this particular information. And again, it's a little tricky to find. So I ended up finding out what the actual document number was. And so that's what I put in here. And then that's what ultimately led me to this. So here is what it actually says. And apparently this is maybe a woman, I guess, that was working for her or something, or I don't know, or it's just a reference from this Denitra Senegar. And interesting that it says closed, the others say open. But in any case, what she says here is that she is, well, I'll read you exactly what it says. It says, requesting documents pertaining to the resurrection chamber. Okay, the resurrection chamber. Okay, that in itself is mysterious and intriguing. The resurrection chamber of Gilgamesh, the location of his body, and the location of the buried Nephilim. Now, I'm not sure all to make of that statement, but if you think about this guy, okay, and he's in this chamber. Now, I don't know what resurrection chamber means, but I have to say, when I look at this guy, he looks like he's alive. He looks like he could wake up and just be like, hey, what's up? So, is it a chamber that he was put in originally? Like what's been said is that he was so far buried deep down that none of the normal decaying, because of the environment that was maintained in there or something, that it kept his body from normal decay. That's one theory. Another theory is, was he in some sort of a special chamber of that time period, that they had technology that, ancient technology that we don't know about, that maybe he was kept in a state of stasis? Or do we have technology now that can take a body that's old and restore it? Over time, maybe it slowly rehydrates it or something and makes it back to normal again. But what an odd thing to be requesting, okay? Why in the world would somebody request something like that unless it exists? Why would this be in an official government document that has now been released to the public? Now, it could be that they're punking us, and maybe they're just throwing that in there, to see who bites on it. But man, that is really intriguing. Of all things, to call it a resurrection chamber of Gilgamesh. Okay, now why might they be resurrecting Gilgamesh of all people? Well, if you remember, this is the guy, according to the Bible, who, you could argue rebelled against God, Nimrod. That he said, I want to be God. I want to be the guy in charge. Sounds very similar to Satan, right? And you could say, the reason God split this all up is because they were trying to take the throne. They were trying to get up to heaven, and they were trying to be God. Very similar to what the Antichrist or the beast is going to do. So it's very intriguing that they would specifically have a resurrection chamber for this person, and that the location of his body is if they've moved his body to another location. I mean, because when they find this stuff, yeah, they might let you know they found a few trinkets here and there, but they're not going to tell you the good stuff. The good stuff always gets carted away and, taken to some area with the number 5 and 1 or something like that. I mean, you don't really, you never hear about that kind of stuff. So it is intriguing. And then they're talking about the location of the buried Nephilim. Maybe that's what that other guy is. Maybe he's another Nephilim or something. But interesting connection between Gilgamesh and the Nephilim here as well. Now, just a note on that. If you haven't already, be sure to check out my playlist on the Nephilim. I still have more to share with you here, but I just want to let you know I do have a playlist on that, and also the one on the Mark of the Beast, because that kind of ties in to some of what I'm sharing here. Now, let's get into the Bible a little bit. Okay, so in Revelation 17, it talks about the beast, okay? And this beast is also talked about in Daniel 7. But it says, the beast which you saw once was, now is not, and will come out of the abyss and go to his destruction. Okay. He once was, now is not, and will come out of the abyss and go to his destruction. Remember that. The inhabitants of the earth, whose names have not been written in the book of life from the creation of the world, will be astonished when they see the beast, because he once was, now is not, and yet will come. Well, boy, I have to admit, that sounds a little bit like a resurrection, if you ask me. Now, we know only God can really resurrect humans, but it's not to say the devil might not try to animate or possess a being of the past and try to use him for the tools that he wants to use him for. Maybe much like he used them to begin with to try to take the throne of God. And so it is interesting that this is a beast which once was, now is not, right, when this was written in John's time, and will again be, yet will come again. So, again, that does point to the idea of a resurrection of sorts. And you have to admit, Nimrod, of all guys, I mean, he really was the man of his time. You could argue the Antichrist of his time. I don't want to speak against him in the whole, I don't know his heart. I don't know where he really stood with God, but the fact that he's building all this and then trying to reach to heaven and establish himself almost like this is our kingdom now. We don't need God anymore. I mean, we're reading into that slightly, but it could be that that's the way the Satanists are reading into it as well. And they're saying, well, this is the perfect guy that we want leading our charge to take over the world. We want a guy like this. And so why don't we find his body? Now's our chance. Let's go in there. We'll fake this war or whatever. We'll make a lot of money on the war and do all the other stuff that we do with wars. But while we're there, let's go in there and let's find this guy and let's resurrect him. We've got the power now. We can clone people. We can take DNA. We can do DNA samples. We can make a new version of this guy, and he could be the perfect guy to lead our satanic rebellion against the Lord. So this could be how the Satanists are thinking, and they could be getting this guy, as it says in an official government document, out of the resurrection chamber. I mean, the resurrection chamber, I mean, even that's just strange, the resurrection chamber. I mean, that just sounds like Revelation 17, like they plan to resurrect this guy, and for what purpose? And the other buried Nephilim, like they're going to resurrect the Nephilim. They're going to bring them back. Okay. Now, keep this in mind. It says he will come out of the abyss. Now, pay attention to that word. We're going to look at a couple others on this. Revelation 11 says, when they finish their testimony, the beast that comes up from the abyss will attack them and overpower them and kill them. Now, he's called a beast throughout Revelation. He's not called the Antichrist or, son of perdition. Those are other terms that are used in the Bible, but in Revelation, he's called a beast. But if you think about it, if this guy is someone who's been resurrected, he's not a human. He's not, and he's being possessed. He's not, you can't call him human. You can't call him a man. So you'd have to call him a beast. He's a creature of some kind. He's hideous. No, I'm not a human being. He's something else, right? He's not a human being. And, So he's some sort of a creature, be like, the Fly, or I don't know. You can think of all the horror movies that might fit, but you know what I'm talking about, right? It's like he's not really, or Beauty and the Beast for that matter. He's not really a human, like a regular human. Something's been changed about this guy, so it makes sense that John would call him a beast. It says, and the dragon stood on the shore, and I saw the beast coming out of the sea. Okay, so again, it comes out of the abyss, comes out of the sea. Okay, interesting. And there's a lot of other references to that. Now, let's look at a couple of the things. Now, as I remind you, the sea, what we call the Persian Gulf today, had flooded into that area, right? And if you remember, he was buried under the sea after it had been parted. And then it came back over and covered him. So he's buried under, the Euphrates River, but at that point, the whole sea had moved in that far as well. So keep that in mind. Couple other references here. Now, the word is abyss, right? And we often translate as abyssos as bottomless pit, right? But I'm going to show you some other interesting connections on this word, okay? So bottomless pit, immeasurable depth, etc., bottomless pit. Okay. So now there is sort of the, this idea of the abyss, right? And we don't really know quite where it is. We know that God has a key to it, and he keeps people locked in there, and or beings locked in there, and does release them. The angel comes and releases them. So there is that whole connection too. But there may be a double play on words going on here that I'm going to show you. It's kind of interesting. Again, that's the reference to the beast of the sea. And then this, of course, we know about the 4 angels under the Euphrates River as well. Okay, take a look at this. Now, this is interesting. Okay, so this is talking about Babel, the abyss, and the gate of the gods. Okay, so if we go down here, it says, and we look at the word abyss, actually. Abyss. We see a couple interesting things, okay? So now this is where we tell you that, so Eridu. Okay, Eridu is where that is where they believe that the Tower of Babel specifically was built. It was built in Shinar, but that, if you looked at that map right there, it says Nimrod's Tower of Babel at Eridu. Okay, at Eridu. Okay, so keep that in mind. So Eridu. Okay, so Eridu. It says, archaeologists have uncovered 18 levels of the temple to Enki at Eridu. The oldest levels of the Abzu, a small structure less than 10 feet square, date to the founding of the city. And consider that the spot remains sacred to Enki long after the city was deserted from 2000 BC. The temple remained in use until 5th century BC, nearly 1,000 years after the first crude altar was built to accept offerings of fish to Enki, the god of the subterranean aquifer, the Abzu. Okay, so they're talking about a god that they're calling Enki, okay, connected to Anunnaki, etc. They're calling this the god of the subterranean aquifer, known as the Abzu. Okay, now this is where we tell you that Abzu, Ab equals water, and Zu equals deep. Now you might have seen that movie, The Abyss, where they went deep in the water, right? So Abzu actually means water deep, is very likely where we get our English word abyss. And the name Enki, or even the word abyssos, Abyssos, that's really where we get the word abyss. English, we get it from Greek. But that word then came from Abzu. And the name Enki is a compound word. En is Sumerian for Lord, and Ki is the word for earth. Thus, Enki, god of the Apsu, was Lord of the earth, or Satan, the devil, right? That's what he says to Jesus. He says, I can give you all the kingdoms. They've all been given to me. I'm the king of this world, or, the god of this world. That's what Jesus refers to him as well. Do you remember Jesus calling someone the ruler of this world? Oh, well, there it is. Or Paul referring to the god of this world. Who were they talking about? Yeah, Satan. Exactly. Here's another piece to our puzzle. Nimrod was second generation after the flood. His father was Cush, etc., etc. In Sumerian history, the king of Uruk. Flood was named Enmarkar. There's that Enmarkar again, a son of Meshki Angasher. Enmarkar is also compound where the prefix means lord and the suffix kar means hunter. Again, goes back to Nimrod, the mighty hunter, right? Cush fathered, he was Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. The Hebrews, doing what they love to do with language, transformed Enmer, the consonants NMR. Remember, no vowels in ancient Hebrew. So that's Nimmer. You'd be like Nimmer, which makes it sound like Marad, the Hebrew word for rebel. That's interesting. Epic poem from about 2000 called Enmerkar and the Lord of Arada preserves the basic details of the Tower of Babel story, including the confusion of language among the people of Sumer. We don't know exactly where Arada is, etc., etc. Besides building a fabulous temple for Inanna, the goddess of the prostitutes, Enmerkar Nimrod also wanted to expand and upgrade Enki's Abzu, or the Abyss. Are you starting to see where I'm going with this? or where it's coming from? I'm not really going with it. I'm reading it. But it's very intriguing, this idea of the abyss, okay, that there may be a double meaning going on here, guys, with the abyss, okay? Yes, it could be a bottomless pit, and we could see it that way. That's one way to see it. Yes, indeed, there could be demons and angels. We know angels kept under the Euphrates as well. But there may be a double meaning here, even of what Nimrod, who Nimrod was, what he represented, who he worshipped, and how that connects to the god of the abyss. The tower was a temple of the god of Enki, lord of the earth, the god of the abyss. You see what I'm saying? So when God is saying that this beast is going to come out of the abyss, right, there's sort of a double meaning going on there. God does that a lot in the Bible where he has double meanings. And it could be, that it could be referring to Nimrod. It could be referring to this man who established the first, maybe you could argue, satanic kingdom on the world, earth, tried to challenge God for heaven. God had to come down and confuse everybody so that they could break it up and get them to stop doing that. And it could be that they're trying to resurrect this guy to pull him out of the abyss, so to speak. Again, having sort of a wink-wink, tongue-in-cheek meaning there that he's referring back to the fact that he worshipped Abzu, or he worshipped Enki, or he worshipped the god of the abyss, right? The Abzu. So that is very intriguing, but there's more. And more as I start to wrap this up. Okay, so check this out. A few more interesting points here. Now, the Nubians, you might have heard that term in Star Wars. The Nubian pyramids were built by the rulers of the ancient Kushite kingdoms. Okay, the Kushite, that's where Nimrod is from. He's from the land of Kush. Here's the Nubian pyramids, okay? So again, they were pyramid builders, okay? So this would not be foreign to our man Nimrod there. Okay, so the Nubians were pyramid builders. Now what's interesting is the Egyptian god Nu is actually the personification of the primordial watery abyss. Whoa. Like I say, this goes very deep, guys. This goes very, very deep. So you got the Nubians, who are the Kushites. Then you got the goddess Nu, who's actually the personification of the primordial watery abyss. Then you got Revelation talking about this beast that's going to come out of the abyss. In other words, it could come out of those people. It could come out of those who worshipped Nu, out of those people who worshipped, this god of Abzu, or the abyss. It has those deeper meanings to it. And that's very profound, considering they literally have in our government records a resurrection chamber for Gilgamesh and are looking for his body and the Anunnakis to raise them from the grave. So what does all this mean? And then if you want to add into that, the Egyptian gods are human hybrids. Okay? And this is the other thing they're doing. Human hybrids. So this could be the beasts that we see walking on the earth, may be a combination of man and beast, the human-animal hybrids, and those could be the modern-day Nephilim, so to speak, that are being created. Now, it's also been said that they may try to use the DNA of Jesus, and that's a whole another journey in and of itself. Now, Jesus, in terms of the blood that supposedly they were able to acquire, be it from the Shroud of Turin or elsewhere, the claim is that Jesus only has 24 chromosomes because he only received chromosomes from his mother, and that the one additional chromosome is of a non-human origin of the 24 chromosomes. I'm just reporting it to you. I'm not claiming whether that's true or not. I'm just saying that that's what's been stated. But one reason for that may be so that they can't clone Jesus, right, as a way to prevent it. But they may try. They may try to get the 23 side to get some of the physical attributes of Christ so that they can use that as part of their, as part of their deception of presenting the Antichrist, who is going to be fooling everyone into thinking that he is Jesus Christ. So guys, I hope you found this intriguing today. There's a lot in there. I kind of breezed through it because, man, there's so much. But would love to get your thoughts and comments. I'm going to actually be heading over to our lounge, our membership lounge, and our fellowship lounge, I should say. And everyone's welcome. It's free. You can come on over. Just click on the button there in the description and join us there. I do a little after video chat. So if you have any questions or comments or things that you want me to respond to in relation to this video specifically, please come there for the after video chat. I'm going to go there now, and you can come and join us, and I would love to share more with you there. But guys, keep looking up. Jesus is coming back, and you want to certainly be ready for that when he comes. Don't take God for granted, right? God cannot be mocked. That's what the Bible says. So don't take God for granted. I think there's a lot of taking God for granted these days, and just thinking, I'm good, I'm fine, and Jesus paid the price for our sins, but we have to respond to that. We got to respond to that, and there's a way that the Bible teaches us to do that. And Jesus himself started his ministry saying, "Repent and believe the good news." That was how he kicked it off. So that's a good place to start. So I hope that you will. I hope you turn to God today, because as we can see, the world is coming to a quick close. The end of the age is upon us, and Jesus is due to return very soon, and you want to be ready when he does. Amen. Guys, I love you. I'm wishing you all the best, all the blessed, and a happy Maranatha.